Hello, much gratitude for all my Patreon subscribers. I'm so glad that you guys are here and willing to heal so that you can create a better life for you and potentially the ones around you and especially if you have children. So today we're going to be talking about spiritual teachings for children in particular. So starting off at the younger ages, when children are born, they automatically carry a vast amount of energy that has to do with the way you were when you were pregnant. So I hope that makes sense. But for example, when I had my first child, I was 19, and she was a child that I did not particularly want to have at that time. I could not fathom to think about abortion because it just was already in my mind that I didn't want to do that. It's just something that I personally didn't want to do. Everyone has the right to make their own decisions, and that was mine. And at that time, I felt very conflicted because I wasn't sure how I could possibly give this child what she would need in order to have a good life, because that was my main thing when I first became pregnant, is that I have to do right by this child. I have to create something for this child, and at that time I had no idea what that was. I just knew I had to do it. And the father of my child, who's actually a rapper and has worked with artists like Lil Yachty, so he might be on the come up. So if he really does get somewhere, then I'm gonna have to write a book about it, okay? But he was not what I needed him to be, though he would try to be something he knew he should. I'm gonna just put it like that. You got men out here who just, you think they want to do right, but they're not making the actions that show that they are going to do right. Half in, half out, especially if they're in their 20s, But with that being said, I also was struggling with finding a place to live at that time. And that was stressing me out to the point where I threatened the baby's life with the amount of stress that I was going through, dealing with homelessness, not really having a place to lay my head that was safe at that time, not really feeling like I had much support. And that's when I decided to contact my own mother, because no matter what kind of mom you came from, when you get to certain spots like that in your life, you are looking for some sort of nourishing motherly connection, even if you don't talk to your mom at all, even if you didn't choose to talk to her if you got pregnant, or someone who got pregnant, you still thought about it. Even people who don't have moms, they still think about it, or they wish that they had their mom there to be able to talk to. And she was a bit upset at first, but she was definitely one of the only people who would help me at that time. So I started telling her a little bit about what was going on in my situation, because she didn't really know the in-depth of it. And I ended up going back to move with her, and she was in a completely different state. So it was a lot of traveling, and it was kind of a challenging decision to make, because when you have a child, you want to try and give it a family, but like I said, the people there were not able to help me, or I was not their main focus. I was not able to get the support that I needed, so I had to go, okay? And I went through a lot of depression during this specific transition, because at the end of my pregnancy, I actually had to go and visit my cousin who was dying at the hospital, and I didn't know if I could potentially try to be someone who around me when I was a child, but my mom had a very strong connection with his cousin, so I mainly wanted to go with her through this because I knew that it was something that she needed support for, or I felt that I could be a support system for her, even though I don't know if anyone was aware of this at that time, but I wasn't even a support system for me, because I was going through a lot mentally, physically with being pregnant, spiritually and emotionally at that time. So it was a very conflicting, challenging time. And think about it in the way that it would have affected a baby, because I was still pregnant. So the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that I am holding on to during this pregnancy are the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that I am giving my child. Its first thoughts, feelings, and emotions are ones of anger, frustration, resentment, guilt, grief, depression. Unknowingly, these are the seeds that I planted in my child before she even came out of my womb. We have to be aware. We have to be consciously aware of the things that we're doing and how they affect our children. We have to understand that we all have family pathologies that can be negative, generational curses that can be negative. And we can pass these things down to our children. Because as I started to get to know my mom a little bit more, as I became an adult myself, I realized the things that she had to go through. In the same way that I felt when I had my child, seems to be a very similar way that my mom felt when she had me. My mom is a very hard-working person. But the strength that was built from her, the strength that she created in herself, mind you, she's a fire sign, was something that could get through any obstacle or blockage. And that was the strength and courage that I sometimes try to channel or wish that I had myself. But my mother, who sometimes comes out as the Queen of Swords in the tarot, is one that built a strong body, mind, and soul. So if one thing is not very clear, I was definitely born of strength, which is the one thing that our mothers tend to give us when they go through a very traumatic childhood experience or traumatic pregnancy or anxiety and depression, which is something that seems to be way too common these days. We have to begin to uplift and encourage the divine feminine, because they are the ones who are creating the children, and the children are the problem solvers of the world. We have to open our mind to these different perspectives so that way we can bring forth new generations that heal, new generations that are able to create a better society for all of us. The only way that we can do that is if we uplift and encourage each other and support each other, even if we're strangers. Raising our vibrations is what allows us to heal and transmute the energy that we may have been born with. And this is an example of the kind of healing work that we will be doing on my Patreon account. I will link that in the description box below. Thank you all for listening to this part of my story, and I hope that it encourages someone and allows them to see themselves for the strength and courage that they have always had. Enjoy the rest of your day, morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Peace.